Well, the 200th episode is just around the corner. Not sure what I'm going to be playing for it, but it's got to be terrible. The kind of thing that legends are written about. So I better use the time beforehand to cover some games that I actually like. Or at least that I grew up liking. As a kid and into my teen years, I was a big fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sega's major platforming mascot from the glory days of the Sega Genesis. Except I grew up with Nintendo consoles, so I was introduced through the series through the 3D games that everyone seems to hate, starting with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for the GameCube and staying with the series until around 2009. It's always bugged me that people insist that all of the 3D Sonic games are just uniformly terrible, because I feel like the reality is a lot more nuanced than that, so I'm going to do a retrospective on the 3D Sonic games. With some omissions, unfortunately. Rise of Lyric already has its own review on my channel. Sorry for the audio, my PC was broken at the time, and I still don't have a console that'll run Generations or the dreaded 06. I mean, I could run Generations on the PC, but that sounds awful. And we're going to start with the game that introduced me to the series, because the sequel hit the GameCube first, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was kind of the perfect entry point for a newbie to the series, mainly because it didn't suck, but also because it has great introductions to all the major characters right off the bat, beginning with Sonic as a 90s as all hell free spirit rebellious hero type with a thrilling escape set to kick-ass music.
Follow me, set me free, trust me and this
The plot of the game is that mad scientist supervillain Dr. Eggman, that's Dr. Robotnik if you grew up with the old games, steals a bioweapon that his grandfather built to be the ultimate life form. And by cosmic coincidence, the genetically perfect organism happens to be another hedgehog that runs fast, the dark and edgy Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow reveals that dear old granddad also left a Death Star in orbit called the Space Colony Ark and its Eclipse Cannon, and to power it and hold the world to ransom they need to track down the Chaos Emeralds, 7 magic jewels that contain unlimited power, and naturally our heroes have to stop them. The game is split into 2 campaigns with 6 playable characters. On the hero side we have Sonic, the super speed powered cool dude with attitude, Tails, the brainiac hero worshipping sidekick with a penchant for stating the obvious that I'm sure won't become satirically overblown down the line,
Look, ramps!
We can use these as ramps.
Knuckles, the muscular meathead who just kind of begrudgingly partakes in the plot because he's assigned to protect another magic rock, and Amy, the insano Sonic fangirl who's there to get kidnapped. On the dark side, we have Shadow, the mysterious rogue, Dr. Eggman, the megalomaniacal supervillain, and Rouge the Bat, a jewel thief who single-handedly raised an entire generation of furries.
No, babe, you know I only have eyes for you.
Overall, it's a likable, well-rounded cast that perfectly captures the Saturday morning cartoon vibe. Up until the end. There are some nonsensical and meme-worthy elements to the story, like how Eggman has to risk his life to break into his own base, or how the military thinks that Sonic is evil after catching Shadow on camera stealing an emerald when anybody with working eyes could tell the difference. Unless Sonic bathed in ink, dyed red highlights onto his eyelids, put in red contacts, and stopped shaving his chest! Each set of characters has a different gameplay style, with Sonic and Shadow's levels being platforming stages built around running. These stages tend to be hallways filled with obstacles like rails, switches, elevators, boost pads, and springs. The levels varied with a nice mix of environments and mechanics. I think the main complaint against these levels is people feel that the game plays for you. In their effort to replicate the old school Sonic games, they have you run through narrow paths and loop-de-loops where there's nowhere else to go, like you have no input. And while I see their point for a few of the levels, especially Radical Highway and the jungle stages, I mostly disagree. Even setting aside the time switches or stages that mess with gravity, there are still mechanics that's possible to screw up and die. Pits and rails and platforms that you need to hit just right, and there is a tangible fun and thrill to blasting through levels without needing to stop. And every level has 4 additional missions that require additional skill and nuance. The Tails and Eggman levels, you're running around in a walker mech shooting hazards and enemies with a cannon and homing missiles. It's a more standard, normal-paced platformer with fun shooting and hovering mechanics, and I really like it. The mode that I'm not so wild about is Knuckles and Rouge doing treasure hunt levels. They're dropped into large open environments, and you wander around looking for keys or Master Emerald shards with a hot and cold detector. Mostly this boils down to wandering aimlessly in big-ass circles until the radar pings, and with how spread out and segmented the level designs get, it becomes irritating. Thing is, though, Knuckles and Rouge have gliding, diving, and wall climbing mechanics that are pretty fun to play with and are suited to non-linear stages. I'm not saying the treasure hunting was a good idea, but it was a logical one. Rouge's third stage is the bane of my existence, though. You're in a big-ass military vault, and on top of needing to find 3 emeralds in 5 minutes, the level is full of vaults that you have to unlock by looking for switches at the top of the stage, which themselves are heavily guarded and tough to access, plus you wandering around in circles until you figure out that an emerald is inside one of the damn vaults in the first place! There are a few elements to the gameplay that are rough. First and foremost is the camera. It's usually pretty good about following exactly where you need, but you adjust it with the shoulder buttons, which often get stuck and don't let you look up, which is a bigger problem in the treasure hunting stages. Several levels have gravity mechanics that get you hung up on edges or skew the controls. Sonic and Shadow have a light dash where you'll zoom along paths of rings that sometimes won't work because it uses the same input as the somersault and the spin dash that you will barely ever use. Sonic and Shadow also have a homing attack that's mandatory to use heavily even though it misses a lot. To be fair though, 20 some odd years later, it was still missing when they used it in Balan Wonderworld. Despite all the extra missions and the rankings that you can get in levels, you mostly don't get rewards for actually doing any of the side content unless you get solid rank A's on every last mission. You don't get the hidden bonus level unless you completely 100% this thing. Sure, completing all the missions for a character gets you new vehicles for the kart racing game, but the kart racing game is crap! Even so, Sonic Adventure 2 is still one of the few games I've racked up over 100 hours playing because it has one of the greatest minigames in the history of time, the Chow Garden. In between levels, you can raise Chow, virtual pets scientifically designed to be the cutest things that ever lived. I mean, look at his face. Who could resist his face? Gimme, little gimme face. You boost their stats by feeding them items that you pick up in levels so that you can race them or enter them in karate tournaments. You give them animals to play with to customize their body parts, take them to school so that they'll learn to dance or sing, buy eggs with new colors and designs, and if you're an utter shit stain on the bowels of humanity, you can throw them into walls and kick and abuse them so that they cry whenever you're near. In fact, it's kind of brilliant foreshadowing that Shadow is the only character without a specific attack that hurts Chow. There are endless combinations and randomized behaviors that make them endearing and feel more alive, and it will never stop baffling me that none of the Sonic games released since this have had a Chow Garden, when it's near universally hailed as one of the best things ever. For how much Shadow has been memed and flanderized as an angsty edgelord in the years since, his character in this first outing is actually really good. We learn that the Ark was just a research station and Shadow was not created as a weapon, but the military just decided that he could potentially be dangerous and tried to forcibly seize him by raiding the Ark, senselessly killing tons of innocent people over an uninformed wild goose chase for weapons of mass destruction. Among the casualties is Shadow's best friend and Gerald's granddaughter Maria, an innocent teenage girl whose murder over a government agenda effectively radicalized them both. It's a theme that has a lot of parallels to reality. When I was a kid, I thought that Shadow's theme was an embarrassing, angsty ballad, but if you pay attention to the lyrics, it's a cry for help, an ominous manifesto of a man crippled with grief and rage who doesn't like being the way he is, but can't find a way out other than death. Shadow only breaks out of his radicalization when he's reminded that Maria was pure and innocent, and that she wanted him to show people that they could be better. Both Sonic Adventure games and Sonic Battle have staunch anti-war themes driving their narratives, and having something meaningful to say is why their stories and characters stay with you over infuriating, empty rambling like Knack. After you finish both campaigns, you'll unlock the final story. Shadow was lying, and assembling all the Chaos Emeralds makes the space colony Ark start hurtling toward the planet to wipe out humanity. Why did this exact same plan feel so stupid when Ultron tried it? The main cast bands together to stop the colony in an epic level that cycles through all the characters except Shadow, and if you didn't grab the strictly optional hidden air necklace upgrade for Knuckles, then you're shit out of luck and gonna hit a brick wall and die because you need it for this final stage. Amy manages to turn Shadow good again, so he fights Gerald's first stab at making an ultimate life form, a giant lizard that needs a life support system to breathe. I can see why the doctor took a second stab at it. Then, in a moment that utterly baffled me as a noob to the series, Sonic and Shadow use the Chaos Emeralds to turn Super Saiyan and stop the Ark and fight the Bio Lizard with a cannon shoved up his pooper. And this final stage with the game's main theme blaring full blast still feels epic as all hell. Seriously, this game's soundtrack is phenomenal. I wish I had it on a CD. Live and Learn, Escape from the City, It Doesn't Matter, EGGMAN, classics! All except the awkward rap songs that played during Knuckles' stages. And even then, Aquatic Mine is a real nice groove. They save the day, but Shadow dies and burns in Earth's atmosphere, a tragic but redemptive and hopeful ending to his story, laying his tortured soul to rest. Until the next game a few years later brought him back. I still hold up Sonic Adventure 2 as a really solid video game, appealing to kids with fun cartoon action, with content for adults with themes that tie into real-world issues. The gameplay is easy to learn, difficult to master, with tons of added missions and style rankings for how deep you want to get into the game, and a side game that can keep you playing way past the game's regular lifespan. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is a good release that got me hooked on the Sonic franchise right away. And it was pretty much all downhill from here. The first Sonic Adventure game was ported to the GameCube with little fanfare after its sequel had landed. It worked out because Sonic Adventure 2 was a much stronger introduction for a new fanbase, but Nintendo players basically got a really inferior sequel as a result. The plot is that Dr. Eggman has again come across a super powerful life form that's going to help him take over the world. This time it's a water monster called Chaos. Eggman needs all the Chaos Emeralds to bring Chaos up to full power, so the race is on to get the Emeralds and stop Eggman. Eventually, because this game's plot is insanely unfocused with each of the characters dicking around doing their own thing with little actual narrative. Sonic's the only one actively fighting Eggman for most of the game, and even he drops everything to spend a full third of his campaign chasing after Amy, and then has 2 levels after the climax for no friggin' reason. Surprisingly, for this being the first 3D Sonic game, there are 6 playable characters that all have their own gameplay style, like they were chucking everything against the wall to see what stuck, and as you can guess, this leads to a very mixed bag of a game. Sonic's levels I actually think I like better than his missions in the sequel. Apart from the wind level, they strongly avert the playing themselves level design and play like really solid platforming stages that incorporate running fairly well. The homing attack works much better and the controls aren't cluttered with extraneous moves to where you do things on accident. I hate the Skydeck stage where you're dropped into a massive room with wind currents that just blow you to your death with no warning, but aside from that, Sonic's level designs are really good. They even work in a casino pinball level like they had in the old 2D games. Okay, what in the hell is Knights, and why does Sega have such a huge boner for referencing it? Tails' levels are brief excerpts of Sonic's where you have to try and beat Sonic to the end of the stage because Tails is a petty jackass. It's just a few brief segments from levels that you've already played, only now you use Tails' very weak flying powers to take blatantly obvious shortcuts, and that's it. Then comes Knuckles' campaign of 5 more treasure hunting levels, but worse, with less refined and chaotic level designs, and a somehow less useful radar. They gave so little of a crap about this mode that if you touch a glowing orange hint ball, she will flat-ass point you directly to an emerald shard for free. Way to miss the point of a treasure hunting game! I really liked Amy's campaign as a kid, but now I'm struggling to figure out why. Her levels are slower, more typical platforming stages with a hammer for attacks and super jumps, and a stalker robot that's always chasing you, except she's so much slower than the other characters that the movement feels painfully sluggish, and the robot is a total non-issue. He can barely catch you and he goes away with 1 bonk to the head. No wonder Amy's got the shortest campaign at only 3 levels. Oh, and back when I reviewed Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, I praised Amy's more conservatively dressed redesign, and some people were asking me what's wrong with her default look.
It's my turn now.
This is what's wrong. Amy's dress is so short that this game flashes her panties at you all the friggin' time. Sonic Battle would lampshade the problem by having her frantically holding down her dress with her jumping animations. And you might say, well, what's the harm in that? Most games add sexuality to their female characters, except Amy is 12 years old, and I don't want to lose another house to the FBI Open Up meme.
Which leads us to Big the Cat.
Oh man, where could that pollywog pal be anyway? Doggy, there you are. What you doing under that car? What's wrong?
Big is an obese, simple-minded cat who talks like he has severe brain damage. His pet frog gets possessed by part of chaos, and to get him back, you go fishing. Fishing! In mandatory levels in a Sonic game! You cast your line into the water, hope by sheer luck that you just happen to plunk down near Froggy, reel the line up and down to try and attract a fish, and then tediously wrestle with your catch so that your line doesn't break because I'm pretty sure that Big fishes with dental floss! Nothing about this is fun! They even give Big a boss fight where you just cast your line into Chaos's body over and over until you get lucky and it ends. What were they thinking?
I don't know who would bother to save us both.
That's the voice of Duke Nukem, by the way, John St. John, who hated voicing Big the Cat so much, he's deliberately forgotten how to do the voice. The only good thing about Big's existence is the game's director was so personally offended that players hated him that he loaded the sequel with Big cameos out of pure spite. Much better is the campaign for E-102 Gamma, an Eggman robot that turns against his master. We see his whole lifespan as he's created by Eggman, made to fight his own brother Beta, later his other siblings are punished for not being good enough soldiers, and Gamma finds his own kin Beta being torn apart because, well, what more use is he to Eggman? Gamma finds a soul, and filled with remorse for what he's done, even indirectly, sets out to rescue his siblings, all of whom have been mutilated by Eggman to be better weapons like they literally bear the scars of war, except he can only rescue them by destroying them because in the old games Eggman made robots by transforming animals, and when he encounters Beta again he's completely transformed and seethes with rage, utterly lost his soul to the drive for ever-escalating violence and revenge, and with his mission complete, Gamma sacrifices himself and dies to release the soul within him to peace. It's a powerful scene over a final boss and ending without a single spoken word of dialogue, and it always felt like this deep, powerful statement on the futility and endless cycle of violence. This is a sequence that has stuck with me more so than so many other games I've played over the years, and how crazy is it that this quiet, meditative story shares a game with Big the Cat? I just wish Gamma's gameplay were better. You barely do anything. Just walk through extremely short levels pointing at stuff to auto-kill it. It plays like a rough alpha for the shooting stages in the sequel. Sonic Adventure is a lot rougher than its successor was. Cutscenes use stiff and minimal animations, which leads to a lot of memeable and riffable sequences.
Oh no.
The camera is terrible and often has to be slowly wrestled into position. Even the Chow Garden feels pointless with such weak interaction with your Chow that they barely seem to even notice that you're there. The big problem with the game, though, is the adventure zones. Level entrances are hidden inside big-ass empty hub worlds that do nothing but waste your time. It's not often clear where you're supposed to go, and it gets frustrating when you just want to play the freaking game. Knuckles' campaign stops dead to send you looking for a key to his 4th level, and I spent half an hour looking for the shittin' thing before pulling out a walkthrough because it's hidden off a tiny fork in the middle of a big-ass maze!
No way. No way.
Although one major improvement over the sequel is that there are actual unlockables before you hit the 100% completion point in the form of old Sonic Game Gear games. They're not very good, but you still want them. Plus, I really like Sonic Labyrinth. Once you beat all 6 campaigns, you unlock the ending. Throughout the game, an orange floating hint ball gives you advice and shows you snippets of ancient times when Chaos was a benevolent guardian spirit. The orb is Tikal, a girl from an echidna civilization that started conquering all its neighbors to seize their land out of greed and entitlement. They attacked a bunch of innocent Chow to try and claim the Chaos Emeralds for yet more power, which pissed Chaos right the hell off and set him about destroying the world. Tikal stopped Chaos by sealing him and herself in the Master Emerald, but that was a stopgap that ended when the Emerald shattered and freed them both. Chaos gets the Emeralds and attacks Station Square in an absolutely gorgeous cutscene, but it turns out the Emeralds have emotions and Sonic can still use them to go Super Saiyan. So you fight the kaiju representing the manifested horrors of colonialism with the power of friendship. The final fight is odd. You have to build up enough speed to hit Chaos's head, and you need to collect a bunch of rings which dry up as the fight goes on. It's a fair amount of trial and error. Plus they cut off the badass theme song halfway through. What gives? You beat Chaos, he calms down, he and Tikal go live in a big emerald, I guess, and Tails says a profoundly inappropriate final line that's been bugging me for years.
All's well that ends well, right?
Tails, you are standing in the wreckage of a city where untold thousands of people just drowned to death. Show some decorum! Sonic Adventure is overall a good game that I think is worth checking out, but it has a lot of problems holding it back from greatness. Sonic's levels are good, Big's levels are an abomination, and the rest is just kind of mediocre, testing out concepts that'd be refined in the sequel, and with useless hub worlds and a meandering story badly weighing things down. If you ever need an example of how ambition has no relation to quality, well, here it is. I'm cheating with this one, but screw it. Sonic Battle is an isometric fighting game with the cast of the Sonic Adventure titles, plus Cream the Rabbit, who had debuted in Sonic Advance 2, and thankfully absent Big the Cat. Yeah, Shadow and Gamma are just inexplicably alive again with no explanation, even though this came out a month before Sonic Heroes brought Shadow back for good. And did I mention no Big the Cat? The plot revolves around Emerald, an ancient robot that is discovered by Sonic and friends and pursued by Eggman. Emerald gets stronger as he collects Chaos Emeralds, and legend says that if he gets all of the Emeralds, he'll go apeshit and conquer the world. But Emerald starts the game with the mental capacity of an infant, and each Emerald also increases his intelligence, so Sonic and friends are basically raising Emerald from childhood and trying to steer him away from his destiny, constantly debating whether Emerald's fate is written in stone or whether this bright and happy new friend of theirs can choose his own life. And given that Emerald seems to be one of the more obscure Sonic characters, you can probably guess how this turns out. Going with the anti-war themes that characterize the adventure games, Battle's ending is utterly heartbreaking, and it did not get retconned. Wait, what? In Sonic Advance 3, they made a copy of him that got a happy ending, and then said copy was a recurring character in the Archie comics? Why am I just hearing this now? The controls are simple while giving you several moves: 3-hit punch combo, aerial attack, dashing attack, uppercut and smash attacks, healing, pursuit moves, a block, and what's neat is that each character has 3 special attacks: a projectile, a power move, and a trap, because all the characters can just pull grenades and landmines out of their butts, and whenever you respawn you map those specials to whether you want to use it on the ground, in the air, or for defense to block other special moves. The game has a really solid combat system that moves at a great pace and controls really smoothly. I just wish there was a limit on how many special moves you could use, since spamming them often feels like a broken strategy. The characters have a great variety to them, each having a unique blend of speed and power and having a good mix of attacks. Sonic, Amy, and Shadow are the speed characters, but each one has distinct movesets that work differently, so it's not just 3 identical slots. Shadow's moves are harder to use, while Amy trades a little speed for some power. Chaos, meanwhile, can barely move, but has great range and hits like a freight train. Bizarrely, Cream, the 8-year-old girl who totes her pet Chow everywhere, is one of the power-style fighters like a weaker, speedier Knuckles. Further evidence that you do not mess with Chow! The only characters I'm not real wild about are Rouge and Gamma, who both feel overbalanced. Rouge is the only fighter who focuses on aerial combat, and in exchange it seems like all of her moves are weak. I distinctly remember as a kid being stuck on an early story mission where Rouge has to fight Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles at the same time, and I could only beat it by slowly whacking all of them on the head from above because most of her other moves kinda suck. And Gamma, Well, when Gamma dies, he explodes and deals a crapload of damage, and his power special is just to commit suicide to trigger said explosion. It makes a key part of his arsenal completely useless. Also, kinda questionable to reference Gamma's poignant end in the mainline games quietly sacrificing himself because nobody wants to live in violence, by having him casually blow himself up as a regular move. Also, it bugs me that Eggman is in the game as the penultimate final boss, but there's no way to actually play as him. Honestly, my only big problem with the combat is that the AI is a little too dumb. Even the strongest AIs will often let you air juggle them with ease, but the combat is still kept hectic and engaging by sending you against multiple enemies at once. The major draw of the game is Emerald himself. His entire moveset is customizable with techniques from the other fighters, down to being able to swap out each individual strike in his 3-hit melee combo, and even alter his posture and walk cycle. And it's kept balanced because not only do you need to unlock the moves with grind, but Emerald has limited memory that only expands by replaying the game's fairly meaty story mode. And the better a move is, the more memory it takes up. So until the very end of the game's grind, you need to ration out weaker moves to keep the stuff that you really want. There are also buttloads of awesome Easter eggs in the form of devastating secret moves and alternate colors for Emerald's body. Not only is customization a ton of fun, it's a really strong incentive to partake in the game's grind. Also, Nintendo Power handed out codes for unblockable instant kill moves that utterly break the game 6 different ways and look hilarious, especially Cream's Turbo Poke because a swarm of Chow was apparently too taxing to animate. Sonic Battle is not a particularly deep or nuanced fighting game, but for a handheld game, it's a hell of a lot of fun with a really good story and lots of fun gimmicks to the gameplay. I recommend it. And yes, I know about Sonic Gather Battle, the fan remake that got banned for being deliberately loaded with viruses. I'd rather have people ask what it is than people pointing it out. Sonic Heroes was the entry where Sonic Team finally stopped screwing around and trimmed the fat from the adventure titles. No hub world, no multiple gameplay styles, no shooting or treasure hunts, no complex plot, just back to basics. 7 levels, 2 stages apiece, focused squarely on platforming like everybody wanted. But then let's muddle the design by having the player control a team of 3 characters that they need to change between constantly, and add an emphasis on combat that drags the game to a halt so the whole thing is clunky, sluggish, and annoying.
You were this close and you lost it.
Sonic Heroes ditches having a storyline. A bunch of characters want to kick the crap out of Dr. Eggman and need to fight their way to Eggman's headquarters so they can do so. The game takes having multiple playable characters to ludicrous extremes by having a roster of 12 sorted into 4 teams. Team Sonic, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, want to fight Eggman because he's about to invade the Earth. Team Rose, Amy, Cream, and Big, want to fight Eggman because Froggy and a Chow have been abducted. Team Chaotix, 3 people I've never heard of from a 32X game, are going after Eggman because they're detectives now and hired by a mysterious benefactor. And Team Dark, Rouge, Shadow, and Rogue Robot Omega, want to rob, interrogate, and take revenge on Eggman respectively. Yeah, Shadow's just chilling in a tank in some Eggman lab with all his memories gone and no explanation of how he's here. The game leaves it vague whether this is the real Shadow or a clone so that later games could explore the mystery. Except later games didn't care. In the next game, the clone Shadows are crap mindless robots and we never speak of this again. Because if the cartoon Hedgehog can breathe in space and turn Super Saiyan, then screw it, he can survive re-entry. The gimmick to the gameplay is that you have 3 playable characters at all times. You have a speed character that runs fast, has homing attacks, and can whip up tornadoes. A flying character that can, well, fly is overselling it, hover for a few seconds at a time, and a power character that can punch enemies for high damage and demolish obstacles. It's clunky and awkward having to constantly switch to the character with the skill you need to get past a given obstacle, especially since the flight character is pretty much useless unless the level is extensively built around slow, plodding high jumps. Combat boils down to just stopping dead in a certain area, switching to the power character, and button mashing, unless it's one of the enemies that you have to stun or disarm with the flight or speed character first, which just makes the combat even more annoying. What should be a fast-paced running platformer just has the flow of gameplay constantly being broken, as you have to stop every few steps to change characters around a momentary obstacle or to fight the enemies. You can pick up power orbs that strengthen your characters, but all these orbs really do is buff their attacks, i.e. maybe let the flight and speed characters kill enemies on their own if you max them out. The 4 teams play pretty much the same with only minor changes to their attacks. Teams Rose, Sonic, and Dark are meant to be easy, medium, and hard modes respectively, but honestly it just feels like the only change is how long their levels are. Team Chaotix is the only team whose levels have a major change because they give you alternate objectives besides just getting to the goal. Like you'll have to grab a certain number of items or slip past enemies undetected, which just means using SPO's invisibility power to play the whole stage with just the speed character. Except already by level 3 you get a full dose of what a bad idea this is when you're tasked to kill 85 enemies and you have to start a 9-minute level over again because you missed 2 of them. Only to find out that you missed them because the game didn't spawn them properly your first run. More often than not, the Chaotix missions are just annoying-ass backtracking that drags the game out, and you already have to play through pretty much the exact same game 4 times in the first place. Sonic Heroes level designs are really good. They have a great variety of gimmicks and implements, good enemy variety, and the levels are way longer and more intricate than the last 2 games, making Heroes feel like it has more meat on its bones. But there are so many elements to the game that just feel off or unfinished. The thing that perpetually drives me nuts is it feels like you will near constantly slide off the level and fall to your death. Power characters charge all over creation for attacks and throw themselves right off the level. You won't stop if you walk too close to the edge and can slip right off. Often when landing from jumps, your characters will go rocketing off in a new direction for absolutely no clear reason. The light dash will fail and send you to your death. Even hard-coded level functions like a cannon that fires you onto a rail can fail and just fire you down a bottomless pit with 0 chance to save yourself because it's a pre-scripted event. The kick in the balls here is that every time you die, you lose all your power orbs, booting your characters back to minimum strength over something that you couldn't help. And that's before all the bugs I ran into getting my gameplay footage for this video. My power character just disintegrated, leaving a level unwinnable. The boss fight with Team Sonic, I swear they just disappeared off the stage, and after several seconds the game just declared that I won. Trying to get a clear shot at a flying cage, I clipped through a wall and died. The damn pinball stages, the controls barely respond and you'll just get stuck or dumped into death pits with no chance. The game just feels really slapdash, and I will strangle whoever came up with the bobsled sections. Every now and then you'll be dumped into a bobsled, and every time you take a hit, you lose a character at random. Except most of the hazards are laser tripwires that you can barely see coming, and if the game randomly decides that you're going to lose the power character, then you can't turn yourself. Tough luck there, jerkweed! I hate the game's graphics being so bright and gaudy, which was a sacrifice to get the game ported to several consoles at once, and all the characters are insanely shiny looking. Being oiled up would explain why you slide to your death constantly, and Tails' voice actor sounds like he did all his lines with his balls in a vice.
What are we gonna do, Sonic? They bring us sideways from here on. Look at all those X-Men robots.
Yes, I know that Tails and Charmy are voiced by some executives' kids. That doesn't make it better. Thank God the games after this just started using the actors from the 4Kids dub of Sonic X so we'd have some consistency between games. The game has a secret ending where it turns out that Metal Sonic from the classic games has gone all T-1000 liquid metal and was impersonating Eggman this whole time, and he orchestrated the game's events to copy DNA from all these super people, which somehow turns him into Mechagodzilla. Trouble is, you don't get access to this secret ending unless you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds. In another throwback to the classic games, to get Chaos Emeralds you have to win a bonus stage where you charge down a path collecting spheres to get speed boost. And I suck hard at these stages. You get so little advance warning where the spheres pop up, you have to be so precise to pick up the spheres, and the controls are such unwieldy stiff butt that get you constantly stuck on the sides of the tubes and unable to get back down. I swear the only way to get these emeralds is to flat-ass memorize every single special stage. And to actually get to the special stages, you first have to go to Act 2 of a level, get a key, and then not take a single hit or fall a single time for the rest of the level. Accidentally touch one single enemy or slide off a level with these slippery-ass controls, and that key's gone! Probably have to start the level over, meaning you're going to be replaying these levels a hell of a lot of times, desperately trying to get these emeralds so you can see the end of the damn game! I've never managed to get more than 2 of the game's Chaos Emeralds, and the process of trying to get any more is flat out maddening, so fuck it! Sonic Heroes is a game that should be a lot better than it is. The levels are well designed and the focus on platforming was long overdue, but the clunky, poorly implemented gimmick and the severe lack of polish in the coding and platforming make the game way more of a frustrating chore to play. If you like it, I get what you see in it. It just annoys way too much piss out of me. Shadow the Hedgehog is widely held up as the prototypical bad Sonic game, the one I get requests to review more than any others besides the Big Daddy that I can't play. It's the black sheep, the edgelord misfit, the big embarrassment of the franchise. I can't even say that with a straight face. And I kind of have to shrug here because I like Shadow the Hedgehog. I like it a crapload better than Sonic Heroes. I always found Shadow the Hedgehog's core gameplay to be some of the best in the series out of the games that I played. It's everything wrapped around that core gameplay that's problematic. The premise of the game is that Earth is invaded by aliens called the Black Arms, and their leader, Black Doom, because of course he's named Black Doom, comes to Shadow claiming that they have an agreement that Shadow will get all the Chaos Emeralds for him. But Shadow still doesn't have any of his memories back since being revived last game, and he has no idea what Doom is talking about. Thus ensues what's meant to be a choose-your-own-adventure setup where you decide whether Shadow is going to fight the aliens, join up with them, or seek answers on his own, with a bunch of horribly executed branching paths through a pretty much non-existent story. Shadow the Hedgehog implements several changes to the series' gameplay that I really like. Getting hit only takes away 10 rings instead of all of them. You can warp between checkpoints, which comes in handy for alternative objectives. Rings that you need for a light dash won't disappear to make sure this infamously temperamental move always works. And in a move that drew a lot of skepticism from the fanbase, Shadow uses guns. And frankly, one of the big problems with Sonic Heroes was that combat was such a friggin' ordeal. You had to stop, switch characters to stun your target, and then switch to the power character and hope you didn't fly off the edge for every single enemy. Hacking out all of that bullshit and replacing it with shoot the enemy in the face a few times drastically streamlines the gameplay and keeps the focus on the platforming where it belongs. Less enthusiastically, they added 2 powers that you can use if you build up hero or dark meters in the corners of the screen. The Chaos Blast that nukes everything nearby, and the Chaos Control that warps you forward into a level. Neither of which are hardly ever useful, and in fact, Chaos Control almost always bypasses critical objectives. The controls and camera can be a little slippery from time to time, and the homing attack is somehow still finicky after 3 damn games, but you don't die constantly from sliding off stages, and dying doesn't cost you important pickups. And the levels are mostly well designed, with a wide variety of layouts, environments, and platforming implements. I especially love the Tron-inspired cyberspace stages, though not all the levels are winners, with the Ark being a crappy sluggish Star Fox wannabe, and the Black Comet being 90% floating over insta-kill water. But with 26 distinct levels, it's the most actual Sonic-oriented stage that one of these games had featured up to this point, without madly copy-pasting content. So if the gameplay is solid, why is this game so notorious? I mean, yeah, it's friggin' hilarious seeing the kids' franchise of cartoon Technicolor animals trying to go all dark and edgy, but what's the real problem? Well, I think it boils down to the game's other gimmick. The game has a branching narratives where there are tons of paths through the story, but you don't pick branching paths by coming to a screen and making a story choice like in most games. Instead, each level has 2 or 3 different objectives, and the one that you complete determines the next level that you play. And the objectives run the gambit from fun to, I will beat the level designer to death with a sack of oranges. A lot of the mission objectives are touch 5 objects in the level, like there will be 5 generators or shrines that you need to activate. These are fine. The maps are designed so that you basically have to try and miss your targets, and the character joining you will drop a lot of hints. A lot of the objectives will be kill X number of enemies, which doesn't sound too bad until you realize most of the levels want you to kill every enemy in a level, and there will often be one straggler that you have to comb the level 3 times to find. I distinctly remember the Lost Impact level where you have to find 35 artificial chaos enemies in a labyrinthine map that's a pain to navigate, and after searching for an hour, I just gave up when I was a teenager. It took me 25 minutes of going painfully slowly, but I finally avenged myself on this level playing it for this video. Some levels have an objective where you have to destroy a tank or an airship before it reaches the goal, and these are a lot of fun. Except if you somehow get ahead of the ship, it will bug out and sit still, rendering the level seemingly unwinnable. The game actually punishes you for being too good at it. There are a few pain-in-the-ass scavenger hunts and a cool level where you use healing tanks or an unlockable healing bazooka to rescue scientists, or at least it's cool until you miss one guy and have to sweep the whole level again.
Sir, we're in pursuit. Mr. Yuji Naka is all right.
Ew, have I got bad news for you guys. There's a carnival stage where you have to grab 400 rings through assorted shooting galleries and minigames, which is pretty fun until you fall once and have to restart the entire level. But the worst level in the game by a country mile is Central City, an entirely open non-linear level that's ruined by forcing you to pick one of two garbage scavenger hunt missions looking for bombs with no radar, compass, or signposting to help, and then drives all the nails into the coffin with a 7-minute time limit. And all the big bombs are locked off until you wait for several robots to slowly spawn and kill them. Is this level called Central City to joke that you need to beat a Flash if you want to beat it? I'm not bothered too much by the game's irritating missions though, because outside of the worst level in history, you're always given the option of just running to the exit. The only thing that it'll cost you is if there's a level or a specific ending that you need to unlock, and by the game's nature, there's almost always an easier way to get what you need. It would suck if you were trying to roleplay specific choices in the story, except the game doesn't really have a story. I did a heroic run through the campaign for this review, and after helping Sonic for 2 levels, Shadow just appears at an Eggman carnival looking for an emerald, then just abruptly shows up at an Eggman base where the Chaotix guys are hacking Eggman's data, where he learns nothing. Then he just abruptly gets picked up by Sonic and friends to go to the Ark, which just abruptly leads to a flashback, and then they just decide to attack the Black Comet where the aliens are coming from. Your choices do impact the story, but only in an abstract sense because you're not actively choosing what Shadow does next in regards to the plot. New levels or developments just come out of nowhere. Most of the endings don't even resolve the alien invasion or this military general dude with a grudge against Shadow. You just run around doing random shit. Though it is hilarious to me that a full 3 out of the 10 endings involve Shadow murdering Dr. Eggman. Why not? He hasn't been the main villain in any of the 3D games yet. The music is still pretty good, with standout songs like I Am All of Me and All Hail Shadow, but the music kind of points to the Flanderization of Shadow's character that was beginning to set in around here. The lyrics to all these main themes boil down to, look how friggin' awesome I am, matching how Shadow transitioned from morally complex, unpredictable rogue to good guy who's just an asshole about it. The only depth that they could milk from his character in this game is having mystery about his past, which we already know about from Sonic Adventure 2, and the new revelations that they tack on in this installment are not impressive. To unlock the last story and get the game's canon ending, you have to unlock each of the main game's 10 endings at least once each, which takes an irritatingly long bare minimum of 10 playthroughs, each like an hour and a half at minimum. Black Doom wants to eat the human race, and it turns out his DNA was used to create Shadow in exchange for Shadow helping the Black Arms take over the world when they returned 50 years later. Apparently the comet is too slow to actually penetrate Earth's atmosphere unless they warp it to the surface with the Chaos Emeralds, which I'm 98% sure is not how physics works. This retcon is meant to explain why Gerald was working on so many doomsday weapons when he was supposed to be a good guy before his granddaughter died. The Eclipse cannon was meant to be used on aliens. But it also makes Black Doom look like an idiot who gave mankind 50 years advance notice of an alien invasion rather just invade right away and collecting the Chaos Emeralds them damn selves. Shadow decides to fight the aliens, Black Doom monologues for what feels like an eternity, Doom can control Shadow because they share DNA in what feels like their way of spelling out that he's the real one and not a clone, and we have probably the easiest super mode final battle yet as you dash around literally shooting Doom in the face with little to no resistance. I don't know why they keep giving you chaos control in this final battle though, the time-stopping power does literally nothing except cut off the kick-ass theme song. The aliens all die, it's cemented that Shadow's a good guy in the series now, he claims they're totally done harping on about Shadow's mysterious past because he's left it behind him. The end. I don't think that Shadow the Hedgehog deserves all the hate it gets as the poster child for bad Sonic games. It's more focused and uniformly solid than Sonic Adventure 1, it's better coded and way more polished than Heroes, and it still actually feels like a Sonic game, unlike most of the games in Part 2, because boy howdy is this franchise about to dive off a cliff. The ow the edge memes and cringe are in full force, with a wildly misaimed tone trying so hard to be dark and serious that it's honestly hilarious, but I think the gameplay deserves more credit than I see it given. Hell, I still like it. It's just sad that after 4 3D Sonic games, we still hadn't got what felt like one definitive Sonic experience, since each one is muddled with half-baked ideas, worse-baked executions, and diluted gameplay. And to leave off with a tantalizing tease for Part 2, that ain't gonna get fixed anytime soon.